Okay, I'm going to do pastrami. Well, howdy folks, how are you doing? Hey, today I am making pastrami, okay, and well, for you this is going to be an interesting and fun and fairly short process. For me, it's going to be rather drawn out. It'll be a little over a week for me. So this is going to be a long video for me, even though it didn't take that long for you to watch. What I'm going to be doing today is making pepperoni. It's one of my favorite lunch meats. This is one of those wonderful meats that has a fabulous history. It goes like way back to, I think, Romania and Hungary. I think, if I remember right, like late 15th or 1600s. I'm not sure on the date for sure, but I think it was in that area. You had Jewish immigrants over there that they wanted a way of preserving meat, and they would take goose thighs, which were very cheap, and they would put them through a process of preserving the meat, which is what we call corning, and then they would process the meat by smoking it afterwards. Delicious, and that's what makes pastrami. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start today with doing the corning process and show you what I'm using. Let me pull something out of the fridge first though, because I want to show you what my goal is, what I'm kind of shooting for here, and what I like out of pastrami. Hang on, let's get this. Here we go. See, this is a pastrami that I made not that long ago, all right, as I was working on perfecting this recipe. This is the stuff you buy at the store. All right, now, when I would open up these packages of meat that I would buy at the store, I'd see a lovely slice of meat like this. Almost looks like a ham, doesn't it? But what it is, regardless of the cut of meat, it's a nice piece that'll fit well onto a piece of bread and will produce a nice sandwich once it's all laid in there just right. So we have this really cool looking, delicious lunch meat here. This is sort of like an approximation of pastrami. I don't know, did I say salami a minute ago? Pastrami? This is an approximation of what I would think would be a good one. Now, most people use what's called a brisket. This obviously is not brisket, ladies and gentlemen. That ain't nobody's brisket. I've been cooking a lot of briskets in my life. That's not a brisket. All right, so what we're looking at here is, this was probably either a rump roast or it was maybe chuck or something like that that they used. It's even possibly sirloin. It is quite tender, I'll give it that. And it is fairly, I guess you could say fairly lean. It really is. That is a really good quality that I'm looking for. So brisket's not going to suit me. The grain isn't what I'm wanting out of this meat. The grain of a brisket's more grainy. It doesn't have that tight, dense quality that sirloin has. And that's what I'm choosing. So I've got it back here, a sirloin roast. It's just a little bit under 5 pounds. It's almost 5 pounds. And I'm going to take it and I'm going to process it, and we're going to turn it into something I've gone through. This was a roast that was the same size, by the way. They were twin roasts and they're identical. But I had this beautiful stuff. Look at this. This is what I made last time. Oh, and the flavor. This one is an absolute winner. This is what I was shooting for when I first started doing this, and I got it wrong. First time I made it, I did it with a brisket. And that is the most, as I said, the most common cut. And that's usually because of price. Brisket's lower cost meat. Simple enough. But for me, that wasn't it. I wanted a certain texture. I wanted the piece that I cut to be a certain shape. I wanted the texture to be a certain texture, the meat density to be what I'm looking for. And sirloin has those qualities. It also has the right fat, all right? So I got a nice sirloin roast here. And I've got all of this stuff sitting out, so come on over, let's take a look at it, and let me show you what I do to create a pastrami. Oh, before I do that, I went out and bought this jar. Hang on, let me go get the jar. Yeah, the other day, I went out and bought this jar just for the sole purpose of doing corning, all right? It's hard to find something big enough to corn meat in that fits in the fridge also. It has to be able to fit a certain space, right? So I went out and found a jar. I measured it, measured the space I have. The jar fits in the fridge just fine. And it holds 2 gallons. Well, being that my base recipe is a 1-gallon recipe, then you put the roast on top of that, that's going to take up a good chunk of space in this jar. Not all of it. This would hold a much larger piece of meat. But that's why I got it. It was specifically for corning meats. So I've got something really cool to corn meats, and I put a couple of marks of tape on there that shows 1 gallon and 2 gallons. So that's what we'll be using. Come on over this way. Let's take a close look at this stuff, and we'll get into this recipe right now. All right, so I have had my meat thawing here. I actually originally I was about to say wet cured. I went ahead and let this wet age, okay? So I gave it about a week in package to allow it to get a little bit of flavor and develop a little more of itself, and it just produces better beef. They tie it up with this string, and I'm going to remove that in a minute. We don't need the string. The coffee is simply for my enjoyment. Here I have some bay leaves, coriander, black pepper, mustard, pink curing salt, a little bit of sugar, and kosher salt. Kosher salt. I'm having a hard time speaking. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to measure out a cup of kosher salt. It can be a little over a cup, like 1.25 cups, because kosher salt's large grain, so it kind of measures a little bit lighter in weight than does a small grain salt. So a cup of salt, 1/2 cup of sugar. It can also be brown sugar if you so choose. On your pink curing salt, this is not the same thing as regular salt, folks. This is sodium nitrate mixed with regular salt and also some red coloring, and let's see, they put propylene glycol and sodium bicarbonate in here. And so anyway, curing salt isn't the same thing as regular salt. This is something that helps your meat to cure a little better and a little faster and just be better quality overall. And it doesn't take much. We're talking teaspoons here. All right, now on your spices, the mustard seed, coriander, this bay leaf, and the black peppercorns. Okay, the coriander and mustard seed for this first part take 1 tablespoon each. A couple of bay leaves and some black pepper. You're going to use about 2 tablespoons of black pepper on the corning process. All right, very simple. Now what do? I'm just going to measure this stuff out. I can measure it into a bowl if I wish, and then pour it into my jar. And I think that's the way I want to do it. Plus I need to fill my jar with some water. So let's get on with this. Here we go. Get myself a little bowl. I'll start with the salt. Now remember, we don't have to kill ourselves on super extreme accurate measurements here. Okay, so I got like a heaping cup of salt there. Lovely. And this is just regular old kosher salt. I purchased commercial, but you know, just any kosher salt. I buy the commercial because it's cheaper when I buy in bulk like that. And again, on the sugar, it doesn't have to be super accurate, but roughly 1/2 cup of sugar. There we go. Come on, lid, work with me. Now, pink curing salt. Now, this is to the pound, and the pounds depend on how many gallons of water you use, and how many gallons of water really depend on how much of this you use. I'm doing 1 gallon of water, so I need roughly 1 teaspoon of pink curing salt. Get something to assist me with. If I wish, I can go up to about 2 teaspoons of pink curing salt, or maybe 2.5, like so. It's going to be enough, folks, right there. And that is the sodium nitrate. The nitrates, nitrites are what act as preservatives in food, including when I smoke it. It'll be getting nitrates and nitrites both when I'm smoking the meat. And that's what causes that red ring when you make barbecue. All right, now I want a tablespoon of mustard seed, and it looks like I might have just about that amount here. If I have more than that, I'll be surprised. Ooh, there you go, spilling it. I guess this is where, if you have Parkinson's, it's going to be a little more difficult. All right, so measure that out. I'm going to need roughly a tablespoon of my coriander here. And if you want to grow some of this, just plant these seeds and get busy growing them. That's all there is to it. All right, black peppercorn. Now on this, I was needing, I don't think this will fit in there, but it does, what do you know? But just barely. I need about 2 tablespoons, roughly, of the black peppercorns. And so it doesn't have to be like super accurate, but I at least want to get in the ballpark. Whoops. There we go. Okay. Now you've seen it all measured out. Bay leaves. Come on, Mr. Bay Leaf, work with me here. There's one of them. There's the most part of another one. So the first one's really big. The second one's in part. And I don't have to kill myself here. Just break it into a couple of large pieces. And that's more than enough, okay? There we have it. This is what I need to create corned beef right here. Now, like I said, this is a 2-part process. First we corn, and then we smoke. And the corning on about a 5-pound chunk of meat like this is going to take a week. So here's the thing. This takes a week. How do I know? How do I know it doesn't take 6 days or 8 days? Well, because I've done this. I measured it. And I know for this size of roast, it's going to take right at 7 days. And it has as much to do with the thickness of the meat as it does with the weight of the meat. If you have 5 pounds of meat that's really thin, well, that's of course going to go ahead and brine fully in a faster period of time, because it doesn't take as long to get the corning brine into the center of the meat. It's just that simple. So the thicker the meat, the longer it takes, and you're going to have to kind of learn to adjust for your recipe. So I'm showing you how my recipe works, and then you have to just learn to be a little bit flexible. As I said, I'm going to take these strings off of here right before I put it in the jar. Right now I'm going to fill that jar though. Let's get that done. I need this full of fresh cold water. So I don't have to measure this. Those are the reason I put these little marks on the front of the jar. All right, there we have it. I got 1 gallon of water up in here. Now I need to dissolve all of my sugar and salt. So I'm just going to put the whole thing in here. I can use my hand or a whisk, whichever I prefer. I could also use just I guess a rubber spatula would work. So I just keep mixing this until I can get all the material in the bottom to fully dissolve. And it just takes a few minutes. Just be patient with it as you go. All right, it looks like we've got it pretty much fully dissolved. Now, I got to get the strings off of this thing and get my meat down in here. So look at that. Isn't that looking really nice? Beautiful solution for creating a corned beef. Now, these little irritations, which to me, that's all they are. See, here's the thing. If I'm going to truss a roast, I want to do it the right way. And that is not the right way, what you just saw right there. That's just silliness. And it holds stuff like this together, okay? So in a way, it kind of makes sense, but you know, for something like this where it's just mostly a big chunk of meat, it doesn't make much sense at all to me. So as you can see, we have a little discoloration from the aging that I did. If we open this up, you can see the color of the meat inside. Really nice and beautiful and pink. So it does change it a little bit when you do wet age. Just don't take it too long. If you're starting to get a certain odor from it, an unusual smell from it, then you're going too far, okay? So keep it short. Now, this goes right down here in our corning solution. And look at that, floats beautifully in there. All right. All I have to do now is wash my hands, get this in the fridge, and I'm gonna rotate the meat every couple of days, but it doesn't need a lot of moving because it's fully suspended in here. Just wanna make sure that it stays completely under the surface. There we go, like that. Now I can get my lid on here. This is time to go in the refrigerator, and it's just a matter of being patient, okay? Always make sure it's covered, okay? So that's an important part of the process. Also, make sure if it's sitting in a pan where it's touching the sides or bottoms, rotate it daily, okay? That way you get even corning. Now, to the fridge. Well, howdy. It has been a week. And for you, a couple of seconds. For me, a week, all right? So anyway, I have all of my corning done on the meat. So I'm about to pull it out of the fridge, and we're gonna get it into some fresh water. I have filled this right up to here with fresh water. And the idea here is now that I have gone ahead and corned this meat, I need to get some of that salt out of it to get a little bit of a cleaner flavor. I mean, you can leave it like that, but I like to clean it up just a little bit. It gives it a bit of a smoother side to this pastrami, okay? And without this step, it might be a little bit on the salty side for you, so I really recommend it. So let me get that thing. We'll get it out of the brine and into the clear water. There we go. My, oh my. Look at that. One fully corned piece of beef, in this case sirloin. So it's as simple as from there into this. But you know something, folks? Even though I'm going to be soaking it, I just want to wash any of the herbs or anything that might be on the outside of the meat off. It might have you know, seeds or herbs or whatever stuck to it. And also just whatever loose brine is there. I'm just going to go ahead and rinse it off real quick, and then I put it right here in this water. There we go. All right, there we go. So it's all ready. I'm going to get down in that water. Now, when I put it in here, I'm just going to push down on it a little, squeeze it a little, and the whole idea there is to get, again, some of that salt out of the outside of that meat. And I am going to change this rinse water probably 4 to 5 times, and I'll be doing this process for about 3 hours at least, okay? I recommend 3 to 4 hours of this. And what that does, again, it just gives you a much less salty flavor in your pastrami, okay? Pretty simple. Okay, now I'm going to go out and prepare my smoker, get it ready for the smoking later. This is going to be about 4 hours of smoking with oak. Pretty basic. In a little bit, once I have my smoker all set up and ready to go, and I have finished debrining the meat, well, we're going to be working in some spice. We're going to be using some mustard, coriander, and black pepper to coat the outside of that with. And it's going to be mostly black pepper with just a little bit of coriander and mustard for the flavor. It'll come out good. This isn't hard, it's easy. And I think once you've tried this, you'll probably be doing it more than once. Okay, time for morning coffee and get the smoker ready. Okay, I came in to check on this and I noticed that the water's getting cloudy now, and as a result I need to go ahead and swap my water out. I'm going to point the camera down in here so you can kind of know what I'm looking at and give you some idea of where I'm going with it. And other thing I wanted to mention is whenever I'm doing smoking, I will take the wood that I'm going to smoke with and I will saturate that in water, and that's what I'm about to do with this bucket of wood here. I'm going to put it down in water and saturate this. Now I don't use this as my fuel source. I like to use charcoal as my fuel source, and of course you can get charcoals of different kind. As a general rule, just your basic everyday charcoal that's made of oak. Okay, so you have two flavors that are going to work together there. All right, now, so you'll know, I'll use the charcoal because it is a steady fuel source. It always puts out the same heat at the same rate, and it just depends on how many of those bricks that you use as to how much heat that you get. And as far as the rate, that is strictly about how much or how often that you replenish charcoal within your smoker to keep it running. And then I put this wood around the fire up on the sides of the fire box, and that heats this wood and causes it to smolder. Because I've soaked it, it smolders a little more slowly. I get a very good flavor this way, a very good smoke release. It keeps the temperatures down, because when you get open flame on just plain wood, that's when your temperatures will spike in a smoker, and that will mess up your smoking. Okay, so you always want to keep that smoke between 200 and 250 degrees. 230 is the sweet zone. Okay, that is just perfect smoking temperature, and it gives you fantastic flavor. So remember that little trick, little tip, it helps. Now, the water and the roast. Come over here, take a look in this, and we'll get on with this. All right, here you can see what I'm talking about. We got some cloudiness in the water. You can see the raggedness of the outside of the meat. Don't worry about that. That's going to be crusted. You're not going to see any of that when I'm finished cooking this thing. All right, so that's just the normal way things look. And also that color is from the anaerobic activity. Now, as far as wet aging, all I did was just leave it in its package that I purchased it in, left it in the refrigerator, and gave it a few extra days so I would get a little color on the meat and a little flavor that build up. That's called wet aging. If it gives you an odor, you went too far. So it should just be a clean, beefy smell, but with a little bit of color change, and then you have it dead on. All right, so that's that. I'm going to change this water, and I'll do that 3 or 4 different times, and that way I can get good clean water by the time I'm done and end up with a roast that doesn't have as much salt in it. Good pastrami. There we go, good clean water. See, I just wanted to show you the difference in what it's going to look like when it gets cloudy. And I'll take this, I'm going to get my hand in there and squeeze it several times. And again, that is to help force out some of that salt. Let's get it a little cleaner taste. And then we get that smoke flavor in it and the pepper flavor on the outside, and it just pops. Well, I'm starting to get ash around some of my top charcoal, so that means it's time to put it in the firebox. By the way, if you want to know how I start this, I like to use a propane torch. It's really clean. Doesn't throw off any trash the way paper does, and it does it really quick also. It doesn't take that much propane. Watch out for this spot because it's real hot right now. Now, I've got my charcoal in here. I'm going to get it arranged a little bit better, add some more charcoal to it, and then pretty soon, as soon as I get a good temperature set in here, I'll be putting the meat on. I need to season it first. Okay. By the way, if you want a really good video on how to set up and use a smoker, I have that. I produced it about, I think it was about 1.5 years ago. So anyway, check that out. It gives a very detailed overview of how to operate an offset smoker if you're not sure about how to do yours. They're really cool. Absolutely hate filming in the sun, hard light. Cloudy days are great to film on. Sunny days, not so great. You would think, oh, that'd be a great time. Now, when it comes to doing video, because of frame rate and certain other things, outside in hard light in the sunlight makes it very difficult. All right, pretty soon that's going to be hot, and I'm going to put my wood on the sides of the fire, and then I'll be bringing the wood out here. But I need to make sure that the temperature in my firebox over here is a nice steady 200 to 250. So I'll try to keep it right in that little bracket right there. 230 is just perfect, and it's coming up in temperature pretty quick, which means my fire is going to be real hot. I'm going to cut my air down to half. All right, so I've got the fire doing good. I'm going to get my meat dried off and get it seasoned up. We'll talk about how I do that. It's not too hard. I like to use a sheet pan to do this. It just makes it a little cleaner, catches the spices that want to fall off the side. And it doesn't have to be absolutely pure and dry, folks. As long as the majority of the moisture is off of it, you're good. All right, folks, my spices that I have black pepper. That's a half a cup of black pepper right there. And right here I've got some mustard seed, and the mustard is 1 tablespoon. And then right over here we have coriander, and this coriander is 2 teaspoons, all right? And what I want to do is, these are whole spice, so I'm going to put them right down into here. And I'll start with mostly just the mustard. And all I'm trying to do here is just to kind of break these down a little. That way they will work well with the pepper, which is also cracked. The coriander is very fragrant. It adds a lot to this, and it doesn't take a lot of this either. Very pleasant aroma, I think, that coriander has. All right. Now, the black pepper I have here, this is what they call a butcher grind, and it's just basically a coarse cracked black pepper, okay? That's the one I like to go with because I like a big piece of pepper. Now, I add to it a little of my grind. I add to it about another tablespoon, and I find that freshly ground pepper mixed into this really causes it to pop, and so I do that for it. I just get my spices mixed together real well, and then I like to use gloves. I'll glove up. You don't have to. And I'm just going to rub this all over that meat and make a little mess on the counter. Now, I'll tell you what, gloving up isn't necessary. It's not like for sanitation's sake, unless, of course, you're working in a restaurant. If you're working in a restaurant, hey, folks, just go ahead and glove up when you're in the kitchen. Show that professional side to your work. It's a good thing to do. There we are. Now, I simply want to thoroughly cover this meat. I want to rub this in. And as I said, getting it all over the place again. And that's perfectly fine. You're allowed to make as big of a mess in your kitchen as you would like to make. I hereby give you permission. I'm going to have somebody's parents mad at me in the future. I can only see it now. And your meat doesn't have to be perfectly, flawlessly covered, but do your best to give it as good of a coating as absolutely possible. This does impart flavor well into the meat, especially through the cooking process that we're going to give it. Now, as far as I'm concerned, this guy is ready to go out and be smoked, all right? It's looking really good. I am right about 230 or 35 degrees, right in there in that beautiful sweet spot. No, I don't set the wood directly into the fire. I set it off to the side, up on the metal. It'll give me a nice smoke that way. Okay. Now, I gotta go get my meat and get right up in here, but also I need to put some water in this. I've got some pans in the bottom. I'm gonna put about a ½ inch of water in each one, and it needs to be good hot water. Just hot tap water will be sufficient. Just keep some moisture in the air for your meat. Now, just for good smoking sake, what I'll do is I'll put this in the middle. Too far to this side and I'm getting too much heat. Too far to this side and the smoke isn't as even as it is in the middle. So I go right for the middle. And there it'll sit. I'll let it smoke for 4 hours. Well, I have a sheet pan here with a couple of pieces of foil that I'm going to wrap this up in. There she be. Gotten a little bit firmer. Isn't that beautiful? Absolutely cool. Now while I'm still out here, might as well just do it now. I've got this foil to wrap this up in. And this is going to go in the oven. And it will be braised, well, not really braised, but cooked sealed in this, which I guess is a form of braising. And at 200 degrees, 250 degrees, I'll learn to talk. There we go. I'll turn it this way. And I have a pot that I'm going to put this in too. In that pot, I'll put a little water in the bottom of it. And what'll happen is this is going to cook in its own juices. It's going to fill up this foil pouch with beautiful meat juices that it will sit there and cook in. And those meat juices are going to, well, they're going to take that beautiful smoky flavor and it's going to help push it right into the center of that meat to finish this off. And that'll be the finish of the cook on this at 250, and that'll be about 3 to 4 hours, depending on the shape, how flat or how round it might be. But yeah, about that. And then it goes in the fridge after that to firm up to be used as lunch meat. I got some hot water here. So it fits in there real nice and neat. The water I put in there just to make sure I maintain moisture in the pot. I find that that helps with the cooking. It helps to provide a steamy atmosphere that does a good even job cooking. Okay, this hits the oven now. I'll be checking that in 3 hours. Boom, there we go. Well, there we go. This is one of my homemade seltzers. This one is actually a grape seltzer. Pardon the noise in the background, that's my dishwasher getting at it. There we go. Nothing like a homemade seltzer to light you up. So, I wanted to show you what this thing looked like now that it's cooled down enough to actually handle. So that's what we're going to do. And I decided to have this out because there's going to be plenty of juice in here. And if some of it wanted to come out, I wanted it to have a place to go. And then I'm going to take this in just a little bit and put it inside of a Ziploc bag. Oh, looky there. Look at that. changed shape a little bit on me. It's drawn up a little bit on me, and that's perfectly fine. It's actually looking really, really good. Now this au jus, let me taste that. Oh, delicious. See, now I have to wash my hands. So that could be some very good stuff if you wanted to save it. Me, well, I'm not planning on saving it. So nope, I don't plan to. Now the neat part about refrigeration on this is it kind of cools it down, pulls everything together, and keeps it nice and firm after the fact. And that's one of the things I really like. I wanted to, though, share with you what the inside of this is going to look like, which is going to be beautiful. Oh dear, looky here. Is that what a really nice pastrami should look like? Right there. Beautiful and red. Oh my goodness. Oh folks, let me tell you. Let's take a close-up look at that. Alrighty, there it is, folks. Wanted you to have that nice close-up look of that beautiful, beautiful slice of meat. And I'm telling you, like I said, I've just tasted this, and it is absolutely stellar. It has that beautiful pink color running all the way through it. That lovely red color that a pastrami should really be right there. Delicious. Not too much of a mess there. A whole lot of delicious going on here. Got that perfect cure. It's not too salty because we debrined it, remember? Really helps. Don't smoke it for more than 4 hours. Doesn't need that. Doesn't need more. Yeah, it just pulls apart. It's so tender. That's what that extra cook in the oven, 250 degrees. I gave it about 3.5 hours in there. This is excellent. So, there's your beautiful recipe. A wonderful way to make your own pastrami. I guarantee you, this is a knockout recipe. Oh yeah. I'm going to be snacking tonight. Thank you very much for watching. Please do me a favor. Take a look down below. You're going to see a good place to type in some comments. Please click on the subscribe if you haven't done so. Click that thumbs up. It really helps me out in placements and also in how often I'm recommended to other people. Help me out there if you would. And another thing, thank you very much for watching. You folks have a good day and enjoy your pastrami. I will.